Russian forces have carried out multiple airstrikes on a military training ground near Lviv in western Ukraine, killing at least 35 people and injuring many more. The assault brings the war closer to the border with Poland and threatens the relative safety of Lviv, where many Ukrainians have fled since the invasion began. In Kiev, the mayor is telling residents to prepare to fight as Russia's military attacks civilian targets nearby.
Fire crews rushed to the scene after a mortar struck an apartment building on the outskirts of Kiev. The artillery shelling started at around 6:30 in the morning. There are people living in these apartment buildings, civilians. This is a suburban area here. With Russia stepping up its bombardment of Ukrainian cities, including the capital, it's feared more and more civilians will be caught in the crossfire. Satellite images show Russian forces just 25 kilometers from central Kyiv. President Volodymyr Zelensky has promised Ukrainians will put up a stiff fight in what he's calling a war for the country's independence. We have no right to let up in the intensity of our defense, no matter how difficult it is. We have no right to let up in the force of our resistance. The enemy is bringing more columns into Ukrainian territory. The besieged port city of Mariúpol continues to bear the full brunt of Russia's bombardment. The humanitarian situation is worsening by the hour for hundreds of thousands trapped without power, running water, or fresh food. In the nearby southern city of Malitopol, which has already been taken by Russian forces, residents turned out to protest against the alleged kidnapping of their mayor and to demand his release. As fighting rages, people in and around Kyiv will be hoping and praying that last-minute diplomacy could still spare them the worst of what has happened to other Ukrainian cities.
And DW's Matthias Böllinger is standing by for us in Kiev. Matthias, fierce fighting on the outskirts of the city now. How is the situation there today?
It's the same as yesterday, the day before yesterday, and all the other days before, almost since the beginning of the war. There's fighting on the outskirts, ceasefires and fighting, fighting and ceasefires, and the Russian troops are regrouping, but they're not yet advancing on the city. Most people have left the city and are waiting, or have fled the city and are waiting outside. Those who are left are trying to stay at home as much as possible. There are roadblocks, etc., etc. It's pretty much like it has been for at least a week.
All right, well, let's take a look out. Overnight, Russia escalated attacks in the west of the country, firing several missiles at a military base near Lviv. What more can you tell us about that attack?
Yeah, there is some important military infrastructure in Lviv, and there have been bombs falling in that area before, or rockets rather, hitting that area before, but it has stayed relatively calm after the first days of the war there, and now in a new round of attacks on strategic goals, Russia has shelled this military airbase. Similar things have happened to other cities that have been relatively peaceful in the past few days. From time to time, the Russians target one of these military airports or bases. Yesterday it was an airport and an oil stock, oil stocks near Kiev that had been set onto fire. So Russia is continuing to target the hinterland, the inland, with missiles and bombs.
Mm-hmm. Ukraine says that there are humanitarian corridors planned for civilians to be able to flee on Sunday today, and there's a renewed attempt to reach the besieged port of Mariupol. Has there been any progress on either of those things?
Well, these corridors, they seem to work from time to time on a smaller scale, but some of the worst hit cities, as Mariupol, have not yet been able to establish these corridors. The people there have been cut off from supplies and medical supplies, food, also infrastructure is destroyed, so there's a shortage of water, electricity is down for more than 10 days now, and I don't know whether this is going to happen today. It's failed every day. They try every day. The Russians promise to open a corridor, and then for some reason it collapses. There's shelling. The buses with medical goods that try to get into the city are shelled, or they can't even leave. So. I try to be optimistic, but it's hard to believe that today it will work.
President Zelensky, in his latest address to the nation, accused Russia of creating what he calls pseudo-republics in Ukraine. What does he mean by that?
Well, there have been news that Russia is planning to do a referendum on a republic in Kherson. This is the only major city that is controlled by the Russians, and these republics would be modeled on the two republics in Donetsk and Luhansk that the Russians have established in 2014. That means they would declare their autonomy or their independence, and they would establish a rule, most likely a military rule or some kind of dictatorship like they have in Donetsk. Russia would most probably recognize them, and they would split off the territory, because the Russian narrative is that Ukraine is not united, and that people in the Russian-speaking regions are unhappy with being part of Ukraine and are seeking autonomy. This is not the case. We have seen demonstrations against Russian occupiers in Kherson, despite the risk and despite people having been arrested on these demonstrations. And as I'm hearing now, we are also seeing again demonstrations against these plans for a referendum. So a significant part of the population is completely against these Russian occupiers. But for the Russian justification of the war, this narrative is of course crucial, and they're going to push it through, it looks like.
I can show you Mark.
So much. Thank you.
Трупачка надо.
А поближе можете подойти?
Guy, it would, but he doing it very bad. This one was shot from this beautiful thing, and I want to say a big thank to our British comrades that helping us. And 1 second, I want to say very good.
Чим воно закінчується?
Та приїжджають. Ні,
Tell me, please, what is your name?
Juan.
Juan? Where are you from?
The U.S.
Yes. What happened to you?
We crossed the first bridge in Irpin. We were going to film other refugees leaving, and we got into a car. Somebody offered to take us to the other bridge, and we crossed the checkpoint, and they start shooting at us. So the driver turned around, and they kept shooting. It's two of us. My friend is Brent Renault, and he's been shot and left behind.
And how is he?
I don't know.
You don't know. You don't know what happened to him.
He was. I saw him being shot in the neck, and we got split, and I got pulled into the.
And who brought you here?
Abbiamo appena pregato la Vergine Maria. Questa settimana la città che ne porta il nome, Mariúpol, è diventata una città martire della guerra straziante che sta devastando l'Ucraina. Davanti alla barbarie dell'uccisione di bambini, di innocenti e di civili inermi, non ci sono ragioni strategiche che tengano. C'è solo da cessare l'inaccettabile aggressione armata prima che riduca le città a cimiteri. Unisco la mia voce a quella della gente comune che implora la fine della guerra. In nome di Dio si ascolti il grido di chi soffre e si ponga fine ai bombardamenti e agli attacchi. Si punti veramente e decisamente sul negoziato e i corridori umanitari siano effettivi e sicuri. In nome di Dio vi chiedo, fermate questo massacro. Vorrei
Тому ми свій обов'язок отримали. Як відділення, полковник академік академічних наук, генеральної відставці Лурін.
Ми переможемо.
100%. Добрий день, бажаю здоров'я. Як ви, хлопці?
Хорошо.
Та не хорошо.
Хорошо.
Нормально? Молодці, дуже круто. Міцні хлопці. Давно?
А нещодавно.
Нещодавно?
5 числа. Ні, 6
Що то? Вода 100 мільйонів? Міна. Підерпіння. Чим можемо допомогти?
Стоять, салат отлично.
Да.
Заботяться.
Супер. Почала готувати на стіл, накривати будемо і за перемогу, і за мир.
Тесть вас дуже дуже поважає. Дякую.
Дякую.
Указом Президента України за мужність, самовіддані дії, виявлений захист державного суверенітету та територіальної цілісності України, вірність військової присязі, нагороджено медаллю за військову службу України.
Дякую вам. Одужуйте. Сил вам, ви молодці. Заради вас і на ваших плечах все це. Це найголовніше.
Старший солдат Петрович Богдан Віталійович.
Поправляем? Поправляйте обязательно. Это важно.
Походженням грудного відділу позвонка, був гемопневмоторакс, хеморагічний.
Добре.
Зонди, які в носі стоять, їх помаленьку треба зразу не можна. Ну, поборемося, виходимо.
Ви молодці.
Зробимося.
Героїзм. Як? Слабкість поки що.
І ще один раз.